So in this video, I'm going to share some tips that you may not have thought about and some insight as well in regards to buying your first home. Most first-time buyers will have read or heard about the top 5 tips or top 10 tips when buying your first property. First one will always be talk to your lender first, then there will be other ones about being realistic, choose your location wise, consider your future, and talk to your experts, as well as also making sure you're cutting your spending and being realistic on your budget. No matter what, the first tip will always be go speak to your lender first, which is a good tip, but in fairness, I do think in the normal market when you can actually go to see open houses all the time, we're not in that normal market right now. My first advice would actually be go see as many properties as you actually can, even before you speak to your lender. But given the circumstances we are in right now and the restrictions in regards to open houses, you probably won't be able to get to an open house anytime soon. And if you don't have funding in place, you are wasting the agent's time in terms of asking for a viewing of property. So that first piece of advice actually probably stands pretty true right now in the current market. But if open houses were actually happening, my first advice would be actually go and see as many properties as you possibly can. My name is Fleming. I'm a chartered property surveyor based here in Dublin. I have over 16 years experience advising both landlords and tenants and investors on acquisitions and on sales. If you've seen any of my previous videos, you will know I focus on what it's like to work in real estate and what it's like to invest in real estate as well. So I'm sure you've all heard of location, location, location. Well, my first 3 tips are going to focus on 3 locational tips. So it'll be location, 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 but I'll actually give tips around each one of those. Amenities are massively important when you look to buy any home, your first home, second home, but amenities are very important when you go to buy your first home. So you need to consider schools, retail, parks, transport. All of these things need to be factored into your decision-making process. And it's good to be close to them. However, it's also good not to be too close to them. So my tip here is not to be too close to them. Schools can actually bring a huge amount of traffic in the morning and you could get stuck in behind a lot of school traffic if you're right beside a school. Retail units can bring in large delivery trucks in the morning as well, which can add to a lot of noise in the area. Transport links can be great for an area and can really improve the value of an area. However, being right beside train tracks can be very noisy. Having a bus stop right outside your house can actually bring extra litter and noise as well. I actually remember being asked to look at a house on behalf of a client. It was a £2 million house here in Dublin 6. The house was beautifully finished, immaculate house and a gorgeous, gorgeous family home. However, there was a bus stop right outside the front of the house and it was a busy bus stop at that. That meant there was going to be people morning and evening standing right outside the house with a good view into the front living room. This, in my opinion, totally took away from the value of the house and I recommended my client not to go anywhere near it, because it just meant you lost your privacy within your house and it wasn't worth paying $2 million for it. My next locational tip is don't go and buy the most expensive house on the street. Go and buy the cheapest house on the street and make it the most expensive house on the street. That's assuming you can actually upgrade and carry out upgrades to the house. The next tip is actually to consider the future of the area you're thinking about buying in. If you select a house, think about the future of that area. Is there any major developments planned from commercial, residential, any schools planned, or are there any major transport links planned as well? These could all actually improve the long-term value of your home that you're looking to buy, but if you're too close to those planned developments, it actually could have a negative impact on your value. There could be a loss of view, or perhaps even worse, there could be loss of access to a certain road or a certain school or a certain area because a new road is planned or a new transport link is planned that cuts you off from certain amenities that you have or enjoy right now. So my next tip is actually about the buying process itself. I think actually a lot of people don't quite understand this. If you're buying by private treaty or something similar, if your bid is accepted, you are required to actually hand over a booking deposit. The actual total booking deposit may actually depend on the value of the property. These can range from $5,000 up to $50,000 depending actually on the value of the property you've agreed to purchase. That booking deposit is fully refundable up until the point you sign contracts. So that's an important thing to remember when you're buying something on private treaty, which generally speaking is in most cases. Once you've gone sale agreed, your solicitor will then have the opportunity to review all the legal documents, as well as you'll have the opportunity to appoint a building surveyor to go in and have a look at the property to make sure there's no major issues. If there is any major issues found from a legal point of view or a structural point of view during this process, you have the ability to walk away from that deal and get your booking deposit back. If you are happy to proceed, you are then required to sign contracts. On signing contracts, you are required to hand over 10% of the value of the property you've agreed to purchase. Once you've done that, you're locked into the actual contract and you're locked into the sale. Generally speaking, in most cases, there's a 4-week closing after you've signed contracts, but that will be up for negotiation with the vendor as well. But most cases, it's 4 weeks after you sign contracts. If you're buying a property on auction, it's important to remember that you need to do your due diligence before the auction date. So you need your solicitor to review all the legal contracts, and you need your building surveyor or architect to review the actual property to make sure there's no major issues. Because once your bid is accepted on the date of auction, you're required to sign contracts and hand over 10% of the property value. This basically means you're locked in once your bid is accepted. In most cases, 4 weeks after the auction, you will be required to complete contracts. Therefore, it is an important thing to remember that if you're buying a property via auction, you need to do your due diligence beforehand. You need to do your legal and structural due diligence beforehand. This means you actually have costs, upfront costs, before the date of the auction or even before your bid is accepted. So therefore, you run the risk of actually wasting a lot of costs going through the auction route. If you're buying property via private treaty, you won't have to fork out a huge amount on due diligence until your actual offer is accepted. And at that point, you will have to engage your building surveyor and you will have to engage your solicitor. But up until that point, you can put in a bid knowing that it actually hasn't had to cost you too much in terms of actually doing major due diligence. If the property you are looking at requires a lot of refurbishment, I would recommend getting costs on those works before placing your bid, so you know what your overall cost will be and you can devise your bidding strategy accordingly. So the next tip, or actually insight, is in regards to service charge. If you're looking to buy an apartment or a house within a private development, there will be annual service charge associated with that property. And it's important to understand those costs before you go into bidding on the property. It's important to actually know that they're there. But one thing that kind of comes up quite a lot is a lot of questions do come up in regards to service charge, and perhaps the agents don't actually know the answers to those questions. They might know what the annual charge is, but generally speaking, the agent won't have full access to the management accounts or won't have access to the management company's full details in regards to a sinking fund and repair that are required. Most of this information will become available during the legal process. So you may not actually get a full picture of what the service charge budget is or what the actual costs are during the bidding process. But you can actually have a look at the development itself to figure out, are there any major costs coming down the lines, or is there something I should be concerned about? I would always recommend having a wander around an actual development to see how well it's maintained. If it's an apartment block, what I would suggest is go up in the lift, make sure the lift doesn't seem rockety, and go down in the stairs to make sure the stairs is well maintained as well. Also have a look around outside to see if there's any repairs required or how well the landscaping is actually kept. So actually some of the major costs that are associated with service charge are actually the employment costs. So if a development directly employs security guards or groundkeepers, they will have a huge impact on the overall service charge budget. The other thing that can have a massive impact on the service charge budget is the structure itself. An underground car park will cost way more to maintain on the long term than a surface car park. The number of lifts within a development will also have a big knock-on effect in terms of the overall service charge as well. So once your bid has been accepted, your solicitor will go off and do the due diligence in regards to the management company and make sure that there's a sinking fund in place and there's no major issues that are flagged in terms of huge costs, in terms of fire issues or any other issues that might actually come up. If there are those issues, the management company has a requirement to actually give that information over to your solicitor during the legal process. So if there are any major issues, they should be flagged during that process before you've signed your contract. So the next tip is an important one if you're looking for value, and that is, if you don't have vision, go out and buy it. Go and seek the help of a designer or an architect or someone who has vision within the property that can guide you and show you what the true potential of certain properties are. Remember, kitchens and bathrooms can be replaced and properties can be painted. I actually recall a few years ago looking at two properties within the same apartment block here in Dublin. One was quoting an asking price of $310 and the second one was quoting an asking price of $375. Went and had a look at both of them. The only difference between the two of them was that one had a new bathroom and kitchen and the other one didn't. The property on the market for $310 got very little views and no offers. The property on the market for $375 got lots of views and had offers within the first day or two and sold quite quickly, and actually sold well above the asking price and sold for $425. The only real difference between the two properties was a $20,000 refurb on a new bathroom and kitchen. But that's what I mean. Someone with vision would have been able to go into the property that was for $310 and acquired it, put 20 grand into it, and it would have had exact same finish as next door that sold for $425. I could give loads and loads of examples on this in regards to lack of vision. I've seen loads of people walk into properties, get to the hall and walk straight back out because the place is in a little bit of a mess, not seeing the actual potential of the property. With a few €1,000 could actually go a long way. My next piece of advice is don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask the agent as many questions as you can think of. Ask about the heating, ask about the BR, ask about the planning, ask is it a protected structure, ask is it leasehold or freehold. And this is one I actually see coming up quite a lot in regards to is a property held freehold and leasehold. And I think a lot of people don't quite understand the difference. So what a freehold means is you own everything above and everything below the property when you buy it. That's not possible when you buy an apartment. Think about it. You can't own everything above and you can't own everything below if you owned an apartment. So that's why they're sold leasehold. And generally speaking, they're sold leasehold with 900 years or 999 years. Sometimes I've seen them as low as 200 years or 225 years. And there is the odd leasehold for old, very old Georgian properties that might be 75 years or less. But there is ways in getting the full freehold of those properties if you tick a certain amount of boxes. Generally speaking, I wouldn't be too concerned if it's freehold or leasehold. It's just a question that comes up quite a lot, and I think people just don't quite understand it. But what I would say to you is your solicitor will be able to advise you during the legal process that if the title is not a markable title in terms of the leasehold is not strong enough, they'll be able to tell you outright that this is not something that you will be able to sell or get a mortgage on in the future. So everyone has their own requirements or their own checklist in regards to what they want from their property. So there will be number of bedrooms that people want, there will be number of bathrooms, there also will be car parking, garden, internet connection. You'll also have home office now that's coming up as well. Everyone will have their own requirements, and some people might be willing to bend on some requirements and not on others. But what's important to think about here is, and this is the tip, is think about the future of the property. How easy will it be to sell in 5, 10 or 15 or 20 years? And that's something I think everyone needs to think about, is how easy will it be to sell or how easy will it be to rent in the future when you're buying it. So if you are a little bit alternative or have an alternative lifestyle or slightly different outlook in terms of life, and you decide to go for a property that suits your needs now but perhaps don't suit the general public's needs, I think it's important to realize that you might find it difficult to sell in the future. So bear that in mind when you're actually purchasing a property. Think about how easy it will be to sell in the future. I think one thing to kind of point out right now is it's getting popular for people to look at country homes or country cottages down in the middle of nowhere that might be going for very cheap, from 50 grand or 80 grand or even less. I think the important thing to think about is when you buy one of these properties is how easy is it going to sell? There's not much point buying an £80,000 cottage in the middle of nowhere that requires €40,000 work, and then you go off and in 2 or 3 years time you realise it's not suitable for you anymore because your kids need to go to school or your work changes, and all of a sudden you're stuck with a property that you've put 120,000 into and you are struggling to sell it because actually no one wants to live there. So my final bit of advice is actually in regards to your bidding strategy. The first piece of advice I'd give is make sure you know what your maximum bid is before you place your first bid on the property. If you get stuck into a bidding war, you need to think about who you're bidding against as well and what their motivations are as well, and perhaps even try to find out what their levels in terms of interest and bidding ability is as well. It's always good to have a quick chat with the agent to find out a little bit more about who you're actually going up against. It's a good idea to actually think about the timing of your bid as well as what day you place your bid on a property. Generally speaking, some agents might be very active and they'll answer a call or answer emails very quickly, and they might actually send out the top bids to the relevant underbidders quite quickly, no matter what time of the day it is. But some agents may not be doing that, and they may be working 9 to 5. If that is the case, you may consider putting in your bid late in the day, so they only get a chance to actually update the actual underbidders of the new bid, and they'll have to sleep on that bid. Sometimes it's a good idea to put in a bid on a Friday evening, so any counter bidders will have the weekend to think about it, and they may actually not be so quick to put in a counter bid that quickly. Also, I think it's important to think about your actual bid in terms of, if you're going in for a counter bid, how much you're actually going up. If you're bidding on a property that's say worth 500,000, putting in a bid of €1,000 extra on top of someone at very early days is one, just going to annoy the agent, and it's also going to annoy the underbidders as well. It's also important to realise that if 2 or 3 bidders are going in small increments on a property, the property price can actually dramatically increase quite rapidly. And all of a sudden you've gone up 20 or 30 grand in the space of a day because 3 or 4 bidders are putting on 1,000 each time, and it can go quite rapidly, quite quickly. Perhaps consider increasing your bid or counter bid by 2% or even more. This could actually scare off other bidders quite quickly. An extra €1,000 may not bear much thinking in most bidders' minds, but an extra €15,000 bid requires a lot of thinking. I hope that makes sense. It's not my advice to everyone, it's just that I think it's important to develop a bidding strategy before you actually go after properties. And I think one of the most important things to kind of note is don't rush into anything. Carefully think about your strategy, carefully think about the property you're going after. If you set a top bid before you actually place any bid, the minute it goes beyond that, walk away. There's going to be other properties out there, and once you've set your bidding strategy at the start, you know how to actually walk away, and don't get emotional about it and don't rush into this. As always, thanks for watching. If you are interested in property, make sure you subscribe to the channel. So far, only about 15% of the viewers on the channel are actually subscribed, so go on, subscribe, do us a huge favor, and also give us a thumbs up. And again, thanks for watching.